Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. Hugh and Alan thought he knew his wife. 17 years of marriage. Twin daughters. A beautiful home. A successful lawyer wife who made six figures while he took care of everything else. He had built his world around Lana Allen, believing every word, every smile, every I love you was real. But on December 15th, at what should have been a celebration, Hugh discovered the woman sleeping next to him every night was a complete stranger. And when I say stranger, I mean someone capable of things that would shock you to your core. Picture this. You find out your spouse has been cheating. Devastating, right? But what if it wasn't just one affair? What if it was 6 different people? What if your spouse had been telling everyone at work they were single? What if they had been making fun of you behind your back for years? How long has this been going on? Hugh had asked, voice trembling, staring at the woman he had loved for nearly 2 decades. Lana didn't flinch. She was silent, expression blank. Hugh's voice cracked. You told them you were single? All those people at your office, they didn't even know I existed? Lana finally looked up. It was easier that way, she said coldly. Hugh stepped back. Easier? You have a husband. You have children. Her gaze was calm, like she had rehearsed this moment. It didn't mean anything, but it did. It meant everything. How far would you go if your lies were about to be exposed? How desperate would you become? And most importantly, would you be willing to kill to keep your secrets buried? That's exactly what we're about to find out. Because when Hugh confronted his wife Lana about her web of lies, her response wasn't tears or apologies. It was a gunshot to the head. Hugh Allen was a good husband, the kind of man who packed his wife's lunch with little notes inside, who took care of their twin daughters, Mira and Zara, while Lana worked late at her high-powered law firm. He celebrated every promotion, every big case win, every success like it was his own. Lana Allen, on the other hand, was living what looked like the perfect life. Successful lawyer, beautiful family, gorgeous house in the suburbs. She was making over $200,000 a year at Morrison, Bradley, and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. She had respect, money, and a husband who worshipped the ground she walked on. But here's what nobody knew: Lana was bored. Dangerously bored. She looked at Hugh and saw weakness where he saw love. She saw boring where he saw stable. She saw a man who was beneath her, a man who wasn't worthy of the successful woman she had become. So she started looking for excitement elsewhere. And when I tell you what she found, you're going to be shocked at just how far this woman was willing to go. It started with David Chin, a senior partner at her firm. Older, powerful, commanding. Everything Hugh wasn't. David had money, influence, and most importantly, he didn't know Lana was married. Wait, let that sink in. David Chun was Lana's boss, and he had no idea she had a husband at home. How is that even possible? How do you work with someone for years and not know basic facts about their life? Unless they're deliberately hiding it. Unless they're living a completely different life at work than they are at home. Lana had told David she was single, available, still looking for the right man to settle down with. She'd said once over drinks at a firm event, her voice low, eyes sparkling with practiced charm. And David believed it. Because why wouldn't he? Who lies about something like that? But David was just the beginning. Once Lana got a taste of living a double life, she couldn't stop. There was Marcus Williams, a young associate who looked up to her like she was a goddess. Always offering to stay late. Always eager for her approval. I just want to be where you are, he told her once during one of their late-night meetings. She smiled. You will be. Just follow my lead. Then came James Foster, an older attorney with deep political ties and connections all over the city. With him, it was influence. Access. You really understand how this game is played, he said, running a finger along the rim of his glass. I didn't get here by being naive, she answered. And then there was Robert Martinez, a sitting judge who should have recused himself from any case involving Lana's clients. But he didn't, because he was sleeping with her. 6 men, 6 different relationships, 6 different sets of lies. And here's the most chilling part. Lana wasn't just having affairs. She was using these relationships, leveraging them to advance her career. She was sleeping with a judge who ruled in favor of her clients. She was getting inside information from opposing counsel. She was building her success on a foundation of betrayal and manipulation. But it got worse. So much worse. Lana had created fake social media profiles where she presented herself as single, carefree, independent. She had credit cards Hugh didn't know about. She was spending thousands on expensive gifts for her lovers, luxury watches, designer ties, weekends in boutique hotels, while telling Hugh they needed to tighten the budget. We need to be smart about money this year, she had told him just weeks before, folding her arms and tapping her nails on the kitchen table. Things are tight. Kyun nodded, concerned. Of course. Whatever you think is best. She even had a secret apartment downtown. A sleek one-bedroom with a skyline view. That's where she met the men. And she paid for it using money from their joint account. Money she told Kyun was for client lunches and networking events. This new firm initiative is demanding, she had said, sliding a folder across the counter. Lots of late nights coming up. The level of deception was staggering. This wasn't a woman who made a mistake or had a moment of weakness. This was a woman who had constructed an entirely separate life complete with fake identities, shadow accounts, and elaborate lies. She would leave that downtown apartment, wipe the lipstick off her mouth, change out of her silk blouse into sweats, and drive home. Then, she'd unlock the door, kiss Kyun on the cheek, and say, "Long day, thanks for waiting up." He'd smile, pulling her into an embrace. "Always," he whispered, unaware of everything. Lana would close her eyes and whisper back, "Good night," like nothing had happened. She would help the girls with homework while secretly texting her lovers under the table. She'd sit at family dinners, nodding along to Myra's story about her science project, all the while mentally planning her next affair. But here's what Lana didn't count on. Secrets have a way of coming out. And when they do, desperate people do desperate things. The question now wasn't just how far Lana had gone. It was how much farther she was willing to go to protect her lies. How much was she willing to sacrifice to keep her double life hidden? December 15th. That was the day Lana's carefully constructed world of deception began to crack. And what happened next would prove something chilling. Sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one you trust most. The law firm's Christmas party was supposed to be a celebration. Lana had just won the biggest case of her career and was riding high on success. For once, she invited Kyun to come with her. It was a surprise. She had been to dozens of these events over the years, always going alone. Always telling Kyun, "You wouldn't enjoy it, it's all suits and legal talk." But this time, she handed him the invitation with a smile. "I want you there," she said, adjusting her earrings in the mirror. "You should celebrate with me." Kyun beamed. "Of course I'll come. I'm proud of you, Lana. You've worked so hard." But the question lingered, why now? Was it guilt? Overconfidence? Or something more sinister? Because what happened at that party would suggest that maybe, just maybe, Lana had been planning something all along. Kyun had no idea. He put on his best suit, combed his hair twice, and drove to the Grand Hotel that night, heart full and proud to stand by his wife. He had no idea he was walking into a trap. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, and expensive wine flowed freely. Waiters in white gloves passed trays of hors d'oeuvres. It was everything you'd expect from a high-end law firm, polished, powerful, elite. Kyun didn't know many people, but he was good at conversation. He shook hands, smiled, and introduced himself warmly. "I'm Kyun," he'd say, "Lana's husband." And that's when things got strange. Person after person stared at him like they'd just seen a ghost. "Oh, you're married?" one woman said, her voice tightening as her eyes flicked toward Lana across the room. I had no idea." Another colleague leaned in, confused. "Wait, how long have you two been together?" There was genuine disbelief in his tone, like the concept of Lana having a husband was completely foreign. Kyun started to feel uneasy. How could these people not know basic facts about his wife's life? They worked with her every day. They had been colleagues for years. And yet, they looked at him like he didn't exist. But the worst was yet to come. He was standing at the bar, ordering drinks for himself and Lana a red wine for her, club soda with lime for him, when a tall, sharply dressed man approached. His suit was custom, his posture confident. Kyun recognized him immediately. David Chun, senior partner, Lana's boss. The man Kyun had heard about in passing, but never met until now. David glanced at him, brows knit in polite confusion. "Excuse me," he said. "You're with Lana, right?" "Yes," Kyun replied, extending a hand with a friendly smile. "I'm her husband." "Kyun. And that's when it happened." David blinked, then tilted his head slightly. "I didn't know you had a husband." 6 words. That's all it took. 6 words to shatter 17 years of marriage. Think about that. This wasn't just some intern or distant colleague. This was Lana's boss, a man who worked side by side with her, who knew intimate details about her schedule, her wins, her losses, her life. And he had no idea she was married. The air drained from Kyun's lungs. The room spun around him. He tried to steady himself on the edge of the bar as a wave of nausea hit. We've been married for 17 years, he said quietly, though he wasn't sure David was still listening. Across the ballroom, Kyun's eyes found her. Lana was laughing, surrounded by a circle of men. Her hand rested lightly on one man's arm, and the familiarity of the gesture made Kyun's stomach twist. Then she looked up, saw him, and the smile on her face vanished. She knew. David, now clearly uncomfortable, cleared his throat. Excuse me," he said, and quickly stepped away. But the damage was done. Hyun didn't taste the drinks, didn't hear the music. He just watched. Watched every smile that now looked too wide. Every laugh that felt forced. Every touch that lingered just a second too long. It was like watching a stranger play the part of his wife. The car ride home was silent. No music. No small talk. No congratulations. Just the sound of tires on pavement and the hum of the engine. Lana stared out the window. Hyun kept his eyes on the road, jaw clenched. They both knew something had shifted. The carefully maintained facade was cracking. When they arrived home, they moved like ghosts through their routine. They checked on the girls Mira and Zara, both asleep under the soft glow of night lights. They locked the doors, turned off the lights. But the tension didn't ease. It hung thick in the air like smoke. The house was suffocating. Lana went to take a shower, probably trying to buy herself time to think of an explanation, to rehearse a lie that might still hold the fragile structure of her marriage together. The water started running behind the bathroom door, and that's when Hyun did something he had never done in 17 years of marriage. He picked up her phone. His hands trembled as he unlocked it. No password change. She hadn't expected him to check. What he found that night was worse than any nightmare he could have imagined. But here's the question that will keep you up at night. What do you do when you realize the person you've loved for 17 years is a complete stranger? Hyun's thumb hovered over the screen. His heart pounded in his ears. The first thread he opened was with someone named David. David Chun. The same David from the party, the one who had looked him in the eyes and said, "I didn't know she had a husband." The messages weren't about work. They were intimate. "Can't wait to see you tonight," David had written earlier that day. "You looked incredible in that red dress." Lana's response was casual, like nothing about it was secret. "I'll try to slip away from the party early," she replied. "Meet me at the usual place." The usual place. That phrase hit Hyun like a punch to the chest. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was a routine. But David was just the beginning. Hyun, his breath tight, began scrolling through her messages. There were 6 different men, 6 conversations, 6 lies, 6 betrayals. The next thread was with Marcus, the young associate. "You're the most amazing woman I've ever met. I've never felt this way about anyone before." Lana's replies were just as affectionate. She was leading him on, making him feel special while sleeping with 5 other men. Then there was James. Older, sophisticated, wealthy. He had sent photos of expensive jewelry. "For the most beautiful woman in the world," one caption read. Hyun's eyes narrowed. He recognized one of the pieces, a gold necklace with sapphire drops. Lana had worn it to their anniversary dinner last year. She'd said it was a gift from a client. And then came Robert, the judge. That thread turned Hyun's stomach. Not only was Robert sending explicit messages, he was discussing legal strategy. "That DUI case next week, I'll make sure it doesn't stick. Your guy walks." They weren't just sleeping together. They were manipulating the law. This wasn't just adultery. It was corruption. But none of that compared to the final blow. Because it was the things Lana said about Hyun in those messages that truly broke his heart. Hyun stared at the screen in disbelief, the text from just a week earlier still glowing under his trembling thumb. "I could probably bring you to the house, and he wouldn't notice." She had sent that to David. She was talking about him. Her husband of 17 years. But she hadn't called him her husband. She had called him her roommate. Hyun's chest tightened. He scrolled again. "To Marcus," she had written. "He's so weak. A real man would never put up with a woman like me working late all the time. But he just accepts it because he's grateful I make more money than him." Grateful? She made it sound like pity. Then came a message to James. "I stay with him because he's useful. He takes care of the house and the kids so I can focus on my real life. But God, he's boring in bed." Hyun felt the nausea rise in his throat. He pressed a hand to his stomach and swallowed hard. These weren't just affairs. These were insults. Humiliations. He wasn't just betrayed, he was mocked. Reduced to a punchline in her private jokes with other men. Their marriage was her convenience. Their children Mira and Zara her cover story. And he? A placeholder. A wallet. A servant. The pain deepened as Hyun opened another folder. Financial records. Credit card statements. Accounts he didn't even know existed. Charges from high-end hotels, restaurants, boutiques spread across the city. Some were in her name. But others? Others were in both their names. She had opened credit cards in his name. She had stolen from their joint accounts. She was spending their daughter's college savings, his hard-earned savings, on other men. "You're budgeting for the twins' college," she had said just last week, when Hyun questioned the shortfall. And all the while, she was buying designer cologne, expensive watches, dinners at rooftop restaurants for lovers who didn't even know her real last name. Then came the photos. Hyun's thumb froze over them. There she was, Lana, in hotel rooms, in silk lingerie, in intimate positions with strangers. Smiling. Proud. Like these moments were trophies. But nothing prepared him for the last thread he opened. A message from just 3 days ago. Lana to David. I'm tired of this double life. I need to find a permanent solution to my problem. Permanent solution? Kewin blinked. His breath caught in his throat. What did that mean? What problem? Him? The house was suddenly filled with silence. The shower stopped. Water trickled in the pipes, and then nothing, just the sound of Kewin's heart pounding in his ears. Lana emerged from the bathroom wrapped in her silk robe, steam curling around her. She looked at Kewin, saw her phone in his hands, saw his face, and she knew. The silence between them stretched like a taut wire, threatening to snap. Kewin, she said, her voice eerily calm, almost too calm. I can explain. Kewin looked up, eyes bloodshot, voice shaking. Explain what, Lana? He whispered, choking on the words. Explain how you've been cheating on me with 6 different men. His voice cracked. Explain how you told all of them you were single. He stood up now, phone still in his hand, staring at her like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Explain how you've been stealing our money to pay for hotels with your lovers. Kewin's voice trembled, but not from weakness this time. It was from 17 years of suppressed pain, swallowed pride, and 1,000 quiet sacrifices he had made for a woman he thought he knew. Explain how you called me your roommate, he said, his voice cracking. How you mocked me to these men. How you've been planning to get rid of me. Lana stood still for a moment, wrapped in her silk robe, her expression blank. Then, something shifted. The mask slipped. Gone was the poised, high-powered attorney. Gone was the carefully managed facade. In her place stood someone colder, sharper, someone dangerous. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curled, and she stepped toward him slowly. You want the truth, Kewin? She said, her voice suddenly laced with venom. Fine. Here's the truth. You're pathetic. You're weak. You're everything I don't want in a man. Kewin recoiled, as though she had struck him. The phone slipped from his hand and landed softly on the bed beside him. After everything, after discovering her betrayal in its most grotesque detail, she was attacking him. I'm a successful, powerful woman, she continued, her voice rising with icy contempt. I deserve a man who can match my energy, my ambition, my passion. Instead, I got stuck with you, a man who's happy playing house, babysitting, cooking dinner while I'm out building a real life. Kewin's hands clenched at his sides. Building a career by sleeping with judges? He shot back. By corrupting the legal system? By lying to everyone about who you are? Lana's expression turned even darker. Her gaze dropped from his eyes to the floor and then back to him, deadened and glassy, as if looking at something she found beneath her. Those men appreciate me for who I really am, she said with a sneer. They see my value. They understand what it means to be with a woman like me. You never did. Kewin's voice dropped to a whisper, raw and heartbroken. I supported your career. I took care of our daughters. I loved you, Lana. Unconditionally. What more could you have wanted? I wanted a real man, she hissed. Not someone who apologizes when I slam the door. Not someone who says, yes, dear, to everything I do. Not someone who's just grateful to be married to me. The cruelty in her tone was like a slap across the face, sharp, calculated, and merciless. Kewin looked at her and realized he wasn't speaking to his wife anymore. He was speaking to someone he had never known. A stranger in familiar skin. He stepped back. His voice changed lower, steadier now. Those men you've been sleeping with, they don't love you, Lana. They're using you. And when this all comes out, when everyone finds out what you've been doing, they'll vanish. Just like that. Something flickered in Lana's expression. Fear. Not fear of losing him. Not fear of losing her family. Fear of losing her career. Her status. The carefully stacked tower of lies that could topple with a single push. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. Nothing is going to come out, she said, eyes locked on his. Because you're not going to tell anyone. The way she said it, you're not going to tell anyone, made Kewin's blood run cold. There was something in her voice he had never heard before. Not anger. Not guilt. Something sharper. More dangerous. Something final. Kewin stared at her, stunned. I'm not going to keep your secrets, Lana, he said, trying to steady his breath. Our daughters deserve to know who their mother really is. Your law firm deserves to know that one of their partners has been sleeping with a judge. Lana's expression twisted instantly. The calm mask she'd worn cracked wide open as rage surged through her like a storm. She screamed wild, guttural, venomous words Kewin would never forget. She called him worthless, pathetic, a parasite. Names that hit him like punches, each one tearing at years of loyalty, sacrifice, and love. But Kewin had reached the limit. After 17 years of enduring whatever Lana dished out, after discovering her betrayal in all its grotesque detail, after being mocked, stolen from, and finally threatened, he snapped. He pushed her. It wasn't hard. It wasn't violent. It was desperate. An involuntary reaction in the midst of heartbreak and chaos. A plea for space, for a moment to breathe. I'm sorry, Hyun said instantly, his voice trembling, his hands rising in surrender. I shouldn't have touched you. I can't process all of this. But Lana didn't flinch. Instead, she looked at him with a hatred so pure it drained the air from the room. And then, calmly, deliberately, she turned and walked to the bedroom dresser. Hyun's breath caught. He watched, frozen, as Lana opened the top drawer. His heart thundered in his chest when he saw what she pulled out. The gun. The one they kept in the house for protection. Lana. Hyun's voice cracked as he backed away, hands still raised. What are you doing? Put that away. But the look in her eyes wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was calculation. Cold. Precise. Deadly. You know what your problem is, Hyun? She said as she leveled the gun at him. You never knew when to keep your mouth shut. Please, Lana. Hyun begged, stepping backward until his back hit the bedroom wall. Think about what you're doing. Think about Mira and Zara. They're sleeping down the hall. But Lana wasn't thinking about Mira and Zara. She wasn't thinking about their marriage. She wasn't thinking about anything except silencing the one person who could destroy everything she had built. You should have minded your own business, Hyun, she said, her voice deadly calm. Hyun stared into the barrel of the gun, the reality of what was happening closing in like a vice on his chest. Lana's eyes, once warm and familiar, now glinted with something cruel and human. You should have been grateful for what you had, she said, her voice low and venomous, instead of digging into things that don't concern you. Hyun's heart pounded so hard it echoed in his ears. This can't be real, he thought. People don't shoot their spouses over affairs. He forced himself to breathe. Maybe she was having a breakdown. Maybe this was temporary insanity. Lana, I love you, he said, the desperation tightening around his throat. We can work through this. We can get counseling, therapy, anything. Please. We can figure this out together. But Lana laughed. Cold. Bitter. It wasn't the laugh of someone cracking, it was the laugh of someone who had already made a decision. Work through this, she repeated, her tone mocking. Hyun, you still don't get it. Her fingers adjusted their grip on the gun. I don't want to work through this. I don't want to be married to you. I don't want this life anymore. The barrel rose, slowly, until it was level with Hyun's chest. Those men I've been seeing, she continued. They respect me. They appreciate what I have to offer. They don't try to control me. They don't question me. They don't make me feel guilty for wanting more than this boring, suffocating, suburban life. Hyun's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't about the affairs. It wasn't about the lies, or even getting caught. It was worse, so much worse. This was about elimination. Lana didn't see him as a husband anymore. She saw him as an obstacle. You can't do this, Hyun whispered, his voice cracking as his back pressed tighter against the wall. You can't just kill me because you want a different life. Get a divorce, Lana. Take half of everything. Take the girls if that's what you want. Just don't do this. A divorce would ruin everything. She snapped back, her finger twitching toward the trigger. There would be investigations. Questions. People would dig into my finances, my clients, the judges. Her voice hardened. My career would be over. And then Hyun understood the full, horrifying truth. She wasn't pointing the gun at him out of rage. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment explosion. She was calm, cold, calculating. This wasn't passion. This was preservation. But if you're dead, she said, voice eerily measured. If this looks like self-defense, then I'm the grieving widow. The victim of an abusive marriage. No one will question my finances. Or my relationships. I'll be free to live my life the way I want. The chill in her tone sliced through Hyun like ice. This had been planned. Every word, every step. He could hardly breathe, but he forced himself to speak. One last try. One final plea to the woman he had once loved, to the woman who had once loved him. Lana, Hyun said, his voice trembling as he searched her face, don't do this. Think about Mira and Zara. Think about everything we built. I know you. This isn't you. He took a careful step forward, his hands still raised. There's still time. Please, just think. You don't have to do this. There's still a part of you, there has to be a part of you that remembers who we were. Who you are. He was speaking not to the woman holding the gun now, but to the woman she used to be. To the mother of his children. To the woman who used to laugh with him at midnight. Who used to hold his hand on cold mornings. Who had once whispered I love you in the dark. It was a final, desperate attempt to reach whatever humanity was left in his wife. Lana's expression never wavered, not a flicker of guilt, not a hint of remorse. She stared down at Hyun with icy detachment, like a surgeon inspecting a procedure, not a wife looking at her husband. Lana, please, Hyun had begged, his voice raw and trembling. I'm the father of your children. I've loved you for 17 years. Whatever problems we have, we can solve them without violence. But his words meant nothing. You were never enough for me, Hyun, Lana said coldly, eyes flat and dead. And now you never will be. The gunshot shattered the silence. The gunshot was so loud it felt like the room exploded. Kyun felt something slam into his chest like a heavy punch. It knocked him off his feet and sent him crashing to the floor. Pain tore through him all at once, and he struggled to breathe. He looked down. Blood was soaking through his shirt, spreading fast. A dark, wet heat. Breathing became harder by the second his lung had collapsed. He was drowning in his own blood. His eyes searched for hers. For anything shock, horror, regret. But Lana didn't move. She stood over him, still holding the gun, looking at him like a stranger. There was no remorse in her eyes. No recognition. Only indifference. Kyun's mouth moved, trying to form words, to plead, to call for help. But no sound came. His vision blurred. The world tilted. His life was slipping away, second by second. And then, from down the hallway, a voice. Small, confused. Mom? Dad? What was that noise? It was Mira. Kyun's heart surged. No, not now. Not the girls. Please, God. But Lana's voice floated out calm and practiced, as smooth as if she were tucking them in for bed. Everything's fine, sweethearts, she called. Daddy just dropped something heavy. Go back to sleep. A lie, told with a mother's warmth. A lullaby covering a murder. She turned back toward Kyun as if nothing had happened. Her face, still calm. Her hands, steady. The gun rested on the nightstand. Kyun could barely move, barely breathe. But something in him fought for Mira and Zara, for the truth, for his life. His hand fumbled blindly toward the floor, toward where he had dropped his phone. His fingers curled around it. With the last of his strength, he managed to tap 911. Then everything went black. 12 minutes later, paramedics arrived. The scene didn't make sense. Lana met them at the door composed, controlled, her silk robe untouched by blood. Her voice was steady, her story practiced. My husband attacked me, she said simply. He got violent when I told him I was leaving. I had to protect myself. But the paramedics were seasoned. They had seen real victims, real panic, real self-defense. And something here felt off. Lana had no bruises, no cuts, no torn clothing, no swelling, no red marks around her neck, no blood on her hands, nothing that supported her version of events. For someone who claimed her husband had violently assaulted her, Lana looked remarkably unharmed. She showed no visible signs of struggle. Meanwhile, Kyun was clinging to life in the ICU. The bullet wound in his chest consistent with a shot fired from several feet away, not during a close-quarters altercation, as Lana had claimed. But what truly disturbed the paramedics and later the investigators was Lana's demeanor. She showed no concern for her husband's condition. No panic. No remorse. Her tone was calm, clinical, focused solely on delivering her version of events with icy precision. While Kyun underwent emergency surgery, detectives began digging. The first break came from Kyun's own 911 call. The dispatch team had recorded not only his labored breathing and whispered plea for help, but also something else. In the background, Lana's voice could be heard. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't calling for an ambulance. She was on the phone with someone else entirely. Phone records later revealed the truth. Lana had called her attorney, not 911, not Kyun's family, her lawyer. Detectives seized her phone. Inside, they found exactly what Kyun had discovered the night of the shooting: texts, photos, and financial records documenting years of betrayal, the number of affairs, the joint credit card misuse, the hidden gifts and hotel expenses. But they also found something new, something that changed the case from betrayal to premeditation. Lana had been preparing for this. 3 days before the incident, she had searched online. How to claim self-defense in a domestic violence case. Legal justification for shooting an abusive spouse. How to hide assets before filing for divorce. The trail was damning, clear, calculated, and cold. And there was more. Investigators interviewed neighbors and family friends. What they heard was unsettling. Lana, for months, had been quietly chipping away at Kyun's character, mentioning how moody he was, how jealous he'd become. He's not well lately, she had said to one neighbor. He gets paranoid when I work late. To another, I don't feel safe sometimes, but I stay for the girls. She had laid the groundwork, creating a narrative, a justification. The financial records told the rest. Lana had been slowly moving money from their joint accounts into private ones under her name. She had closed credit cards. She had sold stock. She was consolidating her power, preparing to sever ties. But the most damning piece came from her home computer. A folder, blandly labeled insurance. Inside, copies of Kyun's life insurance policies. Emails with their insurance agent. Notes on policy clauses and payout timelines. Questions like, how long after death can I claim benefits? And what conditions can void life insurance? She had been planning not just to leave Kyun, but to profit from his death. There was no doubt left in the minds of investigators. This wasn't self-defense. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment rage. This was premeditated, cold-blooded attempted murder. Lana had crafted a persona of the ambitious wife trapped in a loveless marriage, but behind it was a woman who viewed her husband as a liability to be eliminated. Still, she wasn't going down easily. She hired one of the top criminal defense attorneys in the state, a litigator known for turning the ugliest cases into courtroom victories. And together, they began building a defense that was every bit as manipulative as the life Lana had lived. At trial, the defense team turned the narrative on its head. Lana Allen is not a murderer, her lawyer said in opening arguments. She is a survivor. They painted Kewin as controlling, passive-aggressive, emotionally distant. They portrayed his devotion as domination. He isolated her, the lawyer argued, used financial guilt and parental pressure to keep her trapped. The affairs? Those, the defense claimed, weren't betrayals, they were lifelines. Desperate attempts, the attorney said, to find a shred of happiness, a glimpse of freedom, a moment of self-worth. They positioned Lana not as a calculating spouse, but as a woman cornered, exhausted, and finally forced to fight back against her oppressor. It was a compelling narrative. Lana's legal team, led by the charismatic and relentless Russell Bennett, painted a portrait of a woman pushed to the edge. In their telling, Lana Allen wasn't a cold-blooded schemer, she was a survivor. A woman quietly enduring years of psychological torment at the hands of a controlling, emotionally abusive husband. They brought in psychologists and domestic abuse experts who testified about the often invisible scars of emotional violence. They spoke of power dynamics, of manipulation, of isolation. And they insisted that Lana's extramarital affairs weren't betrayals, but coping mechanisms. These weren't acts of infidelity, one expert told the jury. They were acts of survival. Her attempt to maintain a sense of identity and self-worth. The courtroom sat still as Russell Bennett paced before the jury. You've seen pictures of bruises and broken bones in other cases, he said. But in psychological abuse, the wounds are invisible. The bruises are here. He tapped the side of his head. And here. He touched his chest. Lana Allen lived with a man who smiled in public and smothered her in private. It was a story that, in the hands of a lesser attorney, might have fallen flat. But Bennett was convincing. For a moment, even seasoned courtroom observers began to wonder had Kewin Allen truly been the man he claimed to be? And then the prosecution stood. Lead prosecutor Melanie Drake was methodical and quiet, less dramatic than Bennett, but deadly precise. She began not with sweeping statements, but with facts. She showed the jury Kewin's 911 call, the timeline of events, the bullet trajectory. Then came the searches. Phrases like how to shoot a spouse and claim self-defense, and how long after death can life insurance be claimed. But it was what came next that changed the entire trial. We recovered a document from the defendant's law office, Drake said, holding up a printed page for the jury to see. A detailed, premeditated, step-by-step plan for murdering Kewin Allen. The courtroom fell silent. Drake read directly from the document. Step 1. Begin planting seeds about Kewin's instability with neighbors and friends. Step 2. Provoke physical confrontation, record or document, if possible. Step 3. Shoot from a distance. Position body near dresser to support self-defense narrative. Step 4. Call attorney, not 911. Control first narrative to police. Step 5. Prepare media statement, widow of emotionally abusive man finally safe. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The jury sat frozen, their faces hardening with each word. Russell Bennett fidgeted in his seat, his jaw tightening, his argument beginning to unravel. Drake didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She didn't snap, she told the jury, her voice cold and clear. She calculated. She practiced. She planned. The document was irrefutable. It wasn't opinion. It wasn't theory. It was Lana's own words, her own handwriting, her own design. Any sympathy the jury may have felt began to dissolve. And when the group chat messages were presented, texts where Lana and her lovers laughed about Kewin, referred to him as dead weight, even joked about sending him away permanently, there was no question left. She didn't just want to leave him, Drake said quietly. She wanted to erase him. By the time the document was finished being read aloud in court, the defense's narrative completely collapsed. This wasn't a woman driven to violence by years of silent suffering. This was a woman who had coldly and methodically planned her husband's murder while he was downstairs helping their daughters with homework. The prosecution's case was already formidable, but the emotional weight came crashing down when Kewin Allen himself took the stand. He sat in a wheelchair, his body weak, his voice gravelly and slow, the bullet wound still affecting his breathing and speech. But there was strength in his restraint. He didn't rage. He didn't accuse. He told his story with quiet dignity. I loved my wife, Kewin said, his eyes locked on the jury. I trusted her completely. When I found out about the affairs, I was hurt. I was confused. But I never wanted to hurt her. I just wanted to understand why she'd been lying to me for so long. There was a long silence in the courtroom after that. The image was clear. A man who had been faithful, who had been betrayed, and who had nearly died because he asked for honesty. When Lana took the stand, her tone was polished, almost clinical. She spoke with poise, describing her marriage as stifling, her husband as emotionally manipulative. It wasn't always obvious, she explained to her attorney. But over time, it was like I couldn't breathe. But then came the cross-examination. District Attorney Silas approached the witness stand calmly, but with precision. His voice was steady. Mrs. Allen. He began, you claim your husband was controlling. Can you give us specific examples of this control? Lana paused. He was overly involved, she said. In my work life. He didn't like that I was successful. He always questioned where I was going, who I was meeting. Can you provide a specific incident? A time when he restricted you or forced you to do something against your will? She hesitated. He didn't trust me. Silas nodded, then leaned in slightly. Is that why you opened secret bank accounts? Moved money without your husband's knowledge? I needed financial independence, Lana replied. Her voice held, but there was a tremor in her fingers as she gripped the edge of the witness box. Financial independence, Silas repeated. To fund hotel rooms with your lovers? To buy expensive gifts for men who weren't your husband? Lana's jaw tightened. I deserve to have some happiness in my life. The room fell still. Silas didn't look away. Did your husband deserve to be shot in the chest while your daughters were asleep down the hall? I worked for that money. Lana suddenly snapped. I earned every dollar that came into that house. Hewan's little business was nothing compared to what I brought in. I had every right to spend it however I wanted. It was in that moment that the courtroom saw who Lana truly was. The mask of victimhood slipped. Her entitlement bled through. The arrogance. The complete absence of remorse. Silas stepped closer, voice low but sharp. And when your husband discovered your affairs, he asked, when he confronted you about your lies, you decided he deserved to die? He attacked me, Lana insisted. But her voice lacked conviction. She no longer sounded sure of anything, not even her own story. Attacked you? Silas echoed. From what? From the truth? From the consequences of your own actions? Silas approached the bench with quiet force, holding up the printed timeline from Lana's office computer for the court to see. This, he said, turning to the jury, is not the work of a battered spouse in fear for her life. This is premeditation cold, clinical, and calculated. He read each item aloud: dates, strategies, manipulations. Create tension by raising work arguments. Provoke emotional response document as instability. Position weapon near dresser corner visible, reachable. Each line was more chilling than the last. This document, Silas continued, his voice rising just slightly, was created 2 months before you shot your husband. He turned his gaze back to Lana, who sat stone-faced at the witness stand. 2 months. You sat at family dinners. You helped your daughters with their homework. You kissed your husband goodnight, all while planning his murder. Lana didn't respond. Her eyes flicked toward the jury, then back to the table in front of her. But there was no answer to give. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and terrifying in its deliberate precision. The jury was visibly shaken. When the time came for deliberation, it took them less than 6 hours to return. The foreperson stood and read the verdict without hesitation. We, the jury, find the defendant, Lana Allen, guilty of attempted murder in the first degree, with special circumstances for premeditation. Judge Wesley Hartman delivered the sentence in a steady voice. Lana Allen, for the crime of attempted murder with special circumstances, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years to life in a California state prison. As the words sank in, Lana showed no emotion. But the consequences of her choices unfurled rapidly around her. The men she had risked everything for vanished. David Chun, the senior partner who had once considered her a rising star, fired her immediately and refused to take her calls. Marcus, the young associate she had mentored and seduced, told reporters he had barely known her. Her law license was revoked. Her reputation shattered. Her financial assets were frozen, pending fraud investigations. Everything Lana had built, everything she had valued, gone. But the cruelest blow came from the 2 people she had always believed she could control: Mira and Zara. The twin daughters, now 16, had sat through the trial. They had heard the testimony. They had seen the timeline. They had read the texts. They had learned, in excruciating detail, how their mother had planned to murder their father just steps away from their bedrooms. And they chose. They stood by Hewan, helping him through his recovery, visiting him, reassuring him, loving him. They never spoke to Lana again. In the end, this case served as a brutal reminder. Evil doesn't always come in the form of a stranger in the dark. Sometimes, it smiles at you across the dinner table. Sometimes, it's a respected lawyer with a tailored suit and impeccable manners. Sometimes, the most dangerous predator is the one sharing your bed, whispering promises in the dark while quietly plotting your end. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.